sat in a strategy classroom or tried leading a business through constant change, you would already know a plan on paper rarely survives reality. In this video, we'll be diving into one of the most powerful intersections of strategy, leadership, and purpose. Together, we'll explore how great organizations think and act, and we'll try to answer these questions across 5 different levels of strategy. At the first level, we'll explore how does clear vision becomes the heartbeat of an entire organization. Secondly, how does management by objectives looks when you're leading 500 branches but with a mission not to make profit but empowerment. Thirdly, how can strategy stay alive and adaptive when world around you keeps changing? Plus, how does dynamic capabilities turn uncertainty into an opportunity? And most importantly, how can strategic planning become a tool for inclusion, resilience, and national progress? Well, I've spent much of my research life studying and exploring stakeholder theory, the belief that great organizations don't just serve shareholders, but stakeholders. And trust me, I can't think of a better example of this in action than Roshaneh Zafar, the founder and managing director of Kashf Foundation, with a vision to build financial services for all in a poverty-free and gender-equitable Pakistan. So please stay with me till the end, because Roshaneh leaves us with an unforgettable message for young leaders, especially those who believe strategy can change not just companies, but countries. My name is Dr. Mohsin Kazmi, and this is Strategy Playbook, made in Pakistan. Let's dive in and dissect this journey of purpose, resilience, and vision together. Thank you.
Thank you, madam, for taking the time out. Mere khayal hai, aapka introduction, we all already know a lot about you. We know the great things that you have been doing at Kashf Foundation. Just to get everybody on board, thoda sa agar aap apna journey bata de in terms of what you are currently doing. कौन-कौन से ऐसे projects हैं जिन पे अभी आप काम कर रही हैं, या I'm more interested in the future of Kashf Foundation and you as somebody who is leading the organization. इस पे थोड़ा अगर आप brief कर दें.
I think most importantly, we have to understand that a country cannot progress without 50% of the population being part of the economy. So I started as a development economist. That's what my background is. I studied finance and then development economics. And I work for the World Bank. And as part of that process, I realized that we are leaving our women behind in so many ways. We talk about this ad nauseum in Pakistan. In fact, today in Dawn, there was a headline where, one of the chief ministers had stated that without investing in women's education, we are not going to progress. So these are things that we bandy and we talk about, but the intention behind them at times is not apparent. So my work took me through many pathways. Having worked at the World Bank, having traveled across Pakistan, I met a lot of women in low-income communities, and they would, across the board, tell me that you think we don't have the same aspirations. हमारी भी ख्वाब वही हैं जो आपके हैं, मगर हमारे पास सरमाया नहीं मौजूद, हमारे पास स्किल्स शायद हो लेकिन मार्केट नहीं है, मौके हैं लेकिन हमें कोई काम नहीं करने देता और आमदनी नहीं कमाने देता. तो आप अगर हमें ये मौके मुहैया कर सकें, we will be able to then be more actively involved. So it's a no-brainer. I think investing in women is smart economics.
Yeah, it makes all the sense.
So as I was sort of looking at this issue, I met Dr. Yunus and I learned about the process of microfinance, which invests in women's livelihoods. And they invest not just in livelihoods, but they help women make better financial decisions, invest in current opportunities, and also prepare for better future through savings and other interventions, along with providing them capacity building and training opportunities. So I traveled to Bangladesh in the 90s and in the mid-90s, and I spent time with Dr. Yunus and his team, learned about microfinance, and came back and replicated the Grameen Bank in Pakistan. This was the first time that it had been done, and Kashf was the first specialized microfinance organization in the country, established in 1995. Now, the question that you were really asking me is that when, in this journey, what were some of the most important priorities that emerged as I traversed the financial environment for women? So what we realized is that it's not just enough to give women to start business money to start businesses. You also needed to look at the ecosystem under which women entrepreneurs function. So whether it was the decision making in the household, whether it was access to markets, whether it was simply mobility, the ability to travel from one community to the other, or whether it was making financial decisions, or whether it was involving other family members in the businesses that they were running. So we realized that there is a whole gender economics lens that needs to be put into place if you are really wanting to have sustainable change when it comes to women's economic empowerment. So we may have started with loans and savings and financial management, but over time we realized that it was also important to invest in leadership trainings for women, gender trainings for the men, so that they could better understand and support their spouses to run businesses. We also realized that health was important over time. We also realized that contingency management, risk management for low-income households is huge. So to give you an example, if somebody falls sick, where are they going to get the funds? They'll either have to divest their assets, sell the goat, sell the cow, sell the rickshaw to pay for those expenses. So we realized that it was important to build in micro insurance. We started with life insurance, we added health insurance, and we also have now a micro pension program where women can save in a plan for the future. So over the years, we realized that the financial provision also needed to be a whole suite of products. And the capacity building needed to extend not just for financial management and business management, but needed to address social issues. Because without that change, women would not have control and agency over the income that they were generating.
That makes all the sense in the world. Now, macroeconomic conditions in Pakistan, we all know how things are. Cultural limitations, we all understand, I think. From you as the head of the institution, are there any conflicts, any dilemmas that you have to consistently fight with from a strategic perspective? How is life like a CEO of a company where you're trying to create a lot of impact?
So, Dr. Mohsin, those dilemmas would come if you were not crystal clear on your mission and vision. So when I started Kashf, I worked with a team of very experienced board members who had themselves been leaders in their field. So whether it was Dr. Shahid Kardar, or whether it was Khabar Ansari, who was a management person, whether it was my father, SM Zafar Saab, who had all the experience of the history of the country, the politics, and the legal side. So I had, or Dr. Attiya Inayatullah. So I was very lucky to have, and Dr. Yunus from the Grameen Bank, who was my mentor. So I was very lucky that I had mentors who I could go to whenever I was in any kind of a dilemma. And that continues to have been the foray for me, or the support system for me. So whether it was Dr. Ishrat Hussain, who became my board member after my father stepped down, my chair, Kashf chair, after my father stepped down after the first decade of Kashf. Currently, it's Dr. Hafiz Pasha Saab. So we've had the best minds in Pakistan to be advising us. So I think one was that as a leader, you must seek out guidance. You must seek out your mentors very early. So I was lucky that way, and consistently, the mentors that I have, any field that we decide to foray into, we always go and seek out the best of class of individuals who can then advise us. So the advising, the mentorship is very important. The second thing was, as I mentioned, you have to have your DNA right. So get your mission and vision and your core values right, and then may have a strategic plan. So from the very beginning, when we started Kashf in 1995, we did our first strategy planning in November 1995.
That's nice.
That plan was the plan we then ran for 3 years, and so on and so forth. So, and the vision and mission was also written at that time. And over the years, we have reviewed it. But essentially, the fundamentals have always stayed the same, that we want to alleviate poverty. And at the same time, we want to economically empower women and low-income households. So when you twin both sides, we're talking about poverty alleviation, which is an economic driver, but we're also looking at empowering women, which is the social driver. Both of those have been equally part of our mission and vision, and any project or program that we run must balance those two. So I think the mission and vision drives the change that you want to see at the end of the day. And the core values become your bandwidth in terms of how you want to do this.
Now,
what programs do you want to run? How do you build the teams? So currently we have 5,500 staff spread across Pakistan, but we have given them the same raison d'etre, or the same DNA in terms of performance standards, in terms of targets, outcomes, approach, and in terms of balancing the social and the economic mission.
no, I mean, one of the biggest criticisms that many of my students would also do, and we also seen many of the CEOs saying the same thing. यार ये जो strategic plan हम कहते हैं, from a design perspective तो काफी अच्छा है, but because on ground things are very dynamic, macroeconomic indicators are very fluid, we are not sure तो कितनी हद तक ये जो आप strategic plan कह रही हैं would actually be implemented in the shape that you create, and ये कैसे बनता है, कैसे implement करती हैं?
देखिए जी, there's a whole process. So we use the notion of management by objectives. What that means is that we set out goals for the 3 years, and those goals are then translated into objectives and then broken down into smaller pieces. You just can't make a strategy and put it on a shelf. A strategy is a living document. So every month, every 6 months, we actually sit down and review the strategy, and then see, okay, if there's any changes that have to be made, we go back to our board and say, well, these are some of the interim changes we want to make. However, the broad goals are the same. So I think a strategy has to be, it has to cascade down to every tier. So every 6 months, the branch managers, we have over now, mashallah, almost 500 branch managers. I meet every branch manager every 6 months to hear the plans that they had organically made. And the planning from the bottom up is what we do. How have they done against them? And how have the targets been? And what have been the challenges? And then we look at the next 6 months. So you have to embed planning. Strategy is one piece. Planning is the other, and implementation is the third. And then there is a cycle of feedback. So if you have all those 4 pieces together, you are able to then make sure that this is a living document, or this is a living plan that you have. The second thing is, as you mentioned, there are times, for example, when COVID happened, we did away with our strategy. We put it away. We said we're going to work on a quarterly review cycle. And for 2 years, even 1 year after COVID, because we were not clear on what the impact would be, none of us had lived through a pandemic. Though we had heard about the Spanish flu, though we had heard about the plague, though we had read about it, historically speaking, but none of us had ever lived through a pandemic, so we didn't know. So immediately we sat down with our board and we said, we feel that there shouldn't be a plan. Then when we had, the last couple of years when Pakistan was facing high inflation, Pakistan was at the verge of default. As you said, the macroeconomic indicators were going up and down. So our board said, yes, we have a 3-year plan, but we will review it with the credit and program committee. That's our board committee that looks at our operational plans every quarter to see whether we were able to follow the plan, or was there a dissonance or a gap between it. So you can't have one size fits all, and you can't, as I said, you can't put your strategy on a bookshelf and say, okay, now I've made it. It's got to be something that you synthesize and reflect and recalibrate on an ongoing basis. And that is what has been the strength of our organization. If I look back at 30 years, we've never missed planning. the planning meetings are very, very important to us.
Excellent. I was going through the annual report and also some of your previous interview. You keep mentioning these 5 pillars, which are the core essence of your strategy: the financial services, the safety nets, the capacity building, health and well-being, social advocacy. Now, of course, we all understand that resources are limited in terms of financial, time, manpower. How do you prioritize कि इस दफा हम इस पे फोकस करेंगे, इस दफा आप you just can't take all 5 of them at the same time. There's inherent tension. Either you can focus on, ये कैसे decide होता है कि इस पे फोकस करना है?
So yeah, I mean, resource allocation is critical for any plan that you make and any strategic, any strategy that you develop. So the core is microfinance, and that will continue. So our entire thrust is, that's the engine of growth. So for current, if I was to talk to you about the current strategic plan, we finished our first year, which was this year. We are from a July to June cycle. We are in our second year of the plan, and our goal is to reach out to 1.2 million clients. That's very clear. We have the financial plan to support that. We have the growth plans, the HR strategy, so on and so forth. But around it, as I said, when you're working with women empowerment, there are concentric circles. So the first concentric circle looks at the woman entrepreneur, the female entrepreneur, and her skills and her ability to run a business. So how do we make sure that the women entrepreneur will succeed? So our second port of call, or our second point of intervention, so when we are budgeting, is our capacity building and our financial education, our business development, our leadership, all those things that help women become better managers of their resources, of their financial resources, and empower them through negotiation skill, conflict management skill, decision-making skill, agency, however you want to say it. So that becomes the second part. Then there is a larger well-being part when we talk about the family, because the impact of microfinance is not just on the female entrepreneur, but on the family. And when we look at poverty alleviation, we do impact assessments every 2 years. So one of the other things I want to emphasize here, before I go back to my thing about the prioritization, is evidence. Base your decisions on evidence. So Kashf has always been very, very research focused. We have always collected data before we invest in anything. So priorities have to be led by research. As we were researching on the impact over the past, the first decade of Kashf, we realized that poverty is a game of, snakes and ladder. You move up and then suddenly something goes wrong and you're back down. So we realized that healthcare was a major concern. We addressed that through the health insurance program, the micro health insurance program that we have currently. But we also realized that health training was important. So there is prevention and there is curative. So on the preventive side, we needed to educate women on better healthcare and maternal health in particular, because that's where the biggest healthcare problems are coming for women. So we introduced health and the well-being component, which was through training women and men on better reproductive health practices and hygiene and so on and so forth. So we felt that that piece is equally important because it strengthens the link between our financial services program and poverty and women's well-being. So that became a priority, and it came from the evidence from our impact assessments. So the priorities really come from, and of course, you have to budget, how much can you do? We also realized that there are parts of Pakistan where healthcare is very, the quality of healthcare is extremely poor. So now we've prioritized. Again, out of the research, we realized that where, in spite of the health insurance, in spite of the health trainings, where was poverty not changing? And we saw that Sindh was an area where, despite all this, change was not happening. And we realized that access to healthcare was very poor in that province. So we've now started health clinics, telehealth clinics, to further provide an impact. So I think a lot of the programming that you do as an organization doesn't come out of a hat. And now, if you look at it has to come from data and it has to be evidence-backed, and then you decide where to put your resources in. So I don't see it as a conflict per se. I see it as a strategic input. For example, now for the next year, we are working on climate risk
Mhm.
because climate, women, and poverty are all endemically tied. And in Pakistan, as you know, we are, I think, the fifth most vulnerable country right now to climate risk. If we don't do anything about it as a microfinance organization, we will not be, doing service to our clientele, which is now exposed to this risk. So we are looking at climate parameterized insurance. We are looking at training women to be more resilient. We are looking at climate resilient housing. So again, the question would be, where will we get the funding for this? Obviously, you have to create funding pipelines. You have to plan for it. It has to be part of your strategy. And you may have to reallocate resources to some extent. So this is, this is how I feel you can, handle the dilemmas that come from prioritization. If you have the right information, you have the right evidence and data, and then you can plan towards deciding where where the Pareto's principle will apply when it comes to making the decision on strategic prioritization.
Yeah, I mean, this is excellent. Makes all the sense in the world. But just to get the more feel of how easy or difficult it is to be a managing director, being a female. Plus, we plan. Almost all of the companies plan, and every now and then the external factors, they do change. Can you recall in the past couple of years, has there been a major challenge that you have, handled? It would be nice to hear an example on what the challenge was and how did you navigate it through it?
So again, I think some of the most important challenges we've had are the positioning of the country in terms of credit markets abroad. So 50% of our funding comes from abroad, from investors who are focusing on microfinance as a sector, and 50% comes locally. So we've had many challenges in the past couple of years with the standing, with the credit rating of the country goes down, then the cost of funds for us rise internationally and locally. The inflation was another question mark. We had seen high inflation in 2008 post the financial crisis, if you remember.
Yeah.
But again, we hadn't seen the extent of inflation and the speed with which it had grown post the pandemic before. So this was something that was, again, an unknown for us. And we were concerned that low-income families were facing a lot of pressure as a result of the inflation. And how were they going to cope with this? What were the coping mechanisms they were using? What did we need to do as an organization to, be 10 steps ahead of the game to help our clients manage this? So, these were all the questions and the balls in the air that we had to really address with no answers really, because 2008 was a very different scenario as compared to today. So again, as we are thoughtful and we are cerebral. So we went out there and we started, did a research on how inflation was really impacting our clients. And we needed to understand what was the debt stress, what was the income stress, what was the, what were the employability issues they were facing, and what were the dependency issues that they were facing within their households when it came to income and earners, and what was the gender side of all of this. So our research showed us that we needed to be more flexible in terms of products we were offering. Terms had to change. So again, these were difficult times, unknown. There were a lot of unknowns, but going out there and speaking. So one of the things that has always helped us is our connectivity with our clients. So we spend, our teams spend a lot of time being, understanding how the clients' lives are being affected by macroeconomic issues. The other thing I want to emphasize is that micro and macro may not always be coupled. So what happens in the macro space and in the, the overall numbers, the economic numbers of the country may not trickle down to that level at the micro, community level, where women are running either home-based businesses or community-based services that are essential. For example, if a woman is running a small grocery store, for example, and she's trading in essential items and commodities, the demand for her products is inelastic. So to a large extent, even if there's high inflation, there will still be people coming and buying commodities or essential items from her. So we also realized that when we were doing this research, and to deal with this, there were two levels. One was to make sure that our products were aligned with the needs of the clients. So we had to recalibrate them. The other was that we had to provide information to our investors sitting abroad who are looking at the broader picture of the country, being at the verge of default and our credit rating going down, and convincing them that women are bankable assets and they are credit worthy. And even though the economy is moving in another direction, women businesses are still viable and solid, and repayment rates are still high. So, these are the kind of challenges, and this is where clarity and communication comes in. And that's been one of the areas that I spend a lot of time in communicating and, having the numbers to show transparently show the impact.
Yeah, that's really nice. Are there any projects that are more close to your heart? As you said, this is something that you're interested in. Do you have a pet project that you may have started alongside with what you're doing here? Or how do you spend your time being the managing director?
So, I mean, one of the areas that we went in a decade ago now was producing drama serials. This is not something microfinance organizations do regularly, and this is not something I, as an economist or a development activist, really was planning to do, so to speak. But sometimes things happen because they're meant to happen. And they happen because there's a purpose. So this was purposeful and meaningful in terms of communicating, changing narratives around women and women's empowerment and women's livelihoods, and all the gender issues and the cultural matters that we were talking about that actually tend to hold women back a lot of times. How can we address those? So telling meaningful stories through drama serials has been one of the most impactful things we've done in the past decade. And that is something I have been personally involved with. And that's a set of projects that I actually lead. So we've done we're on our 7th one now, which is our last one was on maternal health and population management. Pakistan has an untrammeled population growth rate. And there are lots of, I won't go into how this costs us and what the social and the economic costs of this are and how this is holding us back in so many ways. But what the drama serial really addressed was investing in women's education, which is one way of bringing down the fertility rate in a positive manner. So that drama serial actually was recently awarded at the Hum TV Awards. And we actually swept the awards, and we were very happy because what that shows is that our audiences want to listen or see meaningful narratives.
No, that makes sense. That's really nice, really nice. For women in particular, a lot of my students, especially those who are female, would be a bit more reluctant into walking into a corporate world, क्योंकि अभी भी Pakistan being more patriarchal society, acceptance उस level पे नहीं है. Are there any tips, any recommendations that you would give to this new generation on how they should develop their skills to be at a position where you are right now?
I think the most important thing is authenticity. Know who you are. So one of the things I learned, and it's an interesting story, that came more from when I wasn't living in Pakistan. So I lived in Pakistan till I did my O levels and A levels, and I went as a student to the US. And it was when I was in the US that I realized who I really was and what my values as a Pakistani were. So I think authenticity is something that I've always held very dear to my heart. Kashf is an indigenous organization. We represent the country in all its colors and diversity. So that has always been a ethos that I have. You should never, even as a woman, you should never be apologetic about your gender. And you should always, be men and women can work together very well. And we, for example, at Kashf, 50% of our staff are women and 50% are men. And we have a strong focus on gender equity. Of course, as an organization, we have to work at it. It's not going to naturally happen. So we have all these policies. I won't go into it because we are talking more about the message to young women. So I think first thing is have your, have belief in yourself, be authentic to yourself, never be apologetic. You have skills, knowledge, ability, and hone those. One of the things I've also noticed, though it's changing now, we do know that there's a wage gap in Pakistan. Women earn 70% of what men earn for similar jobs. And what I've seen is that sometimes when women are negotiating their salary scales, they tend to be shy or they tend to back off as opposed to men. And that is where a lot of times the wage gap in the corporate world begins to emerge. So I would suggest that do your homework, get your CV right, know how you're going to be interviewed if it's your first job. But over the years, I think you have, you have to be, for women, a lot of times we also face this label that if you're assertive, you're considered to be aggressive. But I think being assertive or asking for your rights is not a bad thing at all. So, and unless we ask for it, we'll never be, it won't be handed to us on a platter.
Yeah,
so this
sense.
is not a privilege. It is, it's a right. So again, I would urge young women. I don't expect them to start being rude or start being pushy in that sense. But they need to, what is due should be given. So again, a lot of this has to come from the counseling, the career counseling, which is something I would want universities to do for young women, so they're able to represent their voices better. And they can be heard. To the institutions, I always say, throw out all your HR manuals and rewrite them, because they were written by men for men, not for inclusive workplaces. So that's exactly what we keep doing. And COVID actually made us rethink a lot of human resource policies, especially work from home. Pakistan had no work from home policy prior to. So I think there are advantages, and being able to know what you want and how you communicate is equally important.
Yeah, I know we're running short of time. We agreed on 40 minutes, but if that's okay, can I throw in a few more questions?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, you talked a lot about research. I mean, of course, there's a lot of data coming in, and I noticed we were talking about improving the digital skills of the women in general. How developed is your foundation at this point in time to handle all this data coming in? Do you use AI in making decision making, or is it still made by human? Does computers and AI play any role in formulating strategy or predicting?
Okay, so digitization is something we have done. What that means is that all our back office is digitized. So we are a paper-free environment. Our front-end officer goes into the field and uses an app to onboard the client. And all the other processes are also online. And we are interconnected with the Jazz caches and the Easy Pesas of the world. So the repayment also comes through to us through a system which is digitized. On the AI, we use a credit score. So we have the only piece that is digitized is a credit score that comes out for clients who are repeat clients. And that is through an algorithm and that we have developed, and we've trained our data because we have a lot of data on the clients and their credit history. And we have a company that does this for us, that does the algorithm and the training of the data. So the credit score that we have, and we have currently over 11 algorithms running or more perhaps now across the country, because there are different sort of data nodes for Sindh or KPK or what have you. So those algorithms then throw up a credit score for the client. And based on that credit score, we then do the process for the next client. So that's something we do use. We are also doing a Kashf app going forward for the client. to help the client. And in the future, we may use AI as, what you call bots for customer service. But these need to be developed further in local languages. So our clients speak local languages like Sindhi and Pashto and Saraiki. So a lot of the bots right now only do Urdu. So given that, currently we don't, the only AI we use directly is the credit score.
Oh, that's really nice. Thank you for taking the time out.